Making chicken and gnocchi soup. I have all my ingredients out. To start off, we just take, I believe it's half an onion. You're going to take one celery stalk, dice that as well, one garlic clove, and then half of a carrot shredded. We take a tablespoon of olive oil, which I'm about to put into the pan, and then you saute until the onions turn translucent. When you decide to cut your celery stalk, you're essentially going to take it lengthwise and cut it down like this with your knife. Then take each one of those two sides and then cut once more down the edges. That way you can just line up all the four slices and then just chop them. Indicator of how hot your pan is to look at how liquid that oil is. It has a certain temperature in which it starts getting more liquid. Just to double check though, you can take a little bit of, let's say, your carrot and put it inside. And if you hear that sizzle, you know it's good. It's ready to saute. So at this point, we probably going to put the onions in first. There we go. And I'm going to put down the camera while I do this. So we have it in the pan. I'm going to go ahead and mix this up. So you just want to, for sauteing, you want to make sure you got it well mixed. Well, my carrots are kind of clumping together there. And cook it until these onions become a little bit more translucent, essentially. So I'm going to put down the camera once again so I can get these carrots to break up. So, thank you. Well, I'd like to show you the difference between a translucent onion and a regular onion. So if you look, let's say right here, this onion right there is becoming a little bit more translucent. Let's say a regular onion is more like this white one here. This one's definitely not translucent at all. So this has to cook longer. You know, as we let it cook, then you're going to start seeing more of the onions start turning translucent. So you want to wait until they're all translucent, because that'll let you know that the onions are no longer hard and they got their juices out and can work better in the soup. You can see the onions are turning much more translucent at this point, and we're going to start on the chicken over there. Why is that smoking? No. It always smokes down here. It's probably because it's dirty.
No.
Yeah. So typically you're supposed to just cook the chicken with maybe some water, steam it. I'm gonna actually go ahead and use some butter. Oh, it's a little bit dirty. Ignore that. Anyway, so I just use a little bit of butter in the pan because I want to give it a nice flavor cooked into it, at least. A little bit more oily, because or else it does get pretty dry. And then we take the chicken, and here's our cut of wonderful chicken. We're going to put it in the pan, grab our other chicken. I believe this is perfectly thawed. I'm just using some regular organic chicken from Walmart. Well, it's almost, so we got a little bit, it's a little bit hard here connected to each other. So I'm going to put that side down. Got two chicken breasts in there. Here's the third one. I don't like that fat there. Okay, so that's going to go in. We're going to put in some water in just a second and then cover it. And maybe just a little bit more. Okay, so with the water, you just basically barely want to cover the bottom, as you can see right there. Right? We're going to turn the heat up just a little bit, maybe to like a low, medium, high. I know that sounds funny, but it's a medium high, but it's a low type of medium high. Medium high would be like 6.5. Anyway, and then we're going to let that cook. I'll go ahead and cover this. That is not the right size cover. Oh well. Close enough, and then we let it steam. We're supposed to add chicken stock to this, but I decided to add chicken broth. Broth. The only difference between broth and stock is that chicken stock is more made from bones. It's supposed to be more thick. Broth is less strong. It's made from the meat of the chicken, and I don't know. Like sometimes the broth can be a little bit salty, so I went with the one with a little bit less sodium, because you don't want to ruin the taste of your dish with too much salt. You kind of have to take into effect when you decide to season it how much salt your broth or stock already has, because that can vary widely depending on which one you decide to buy. So we're about ready to go ahead and turn this over though. We just want to wait until we see the top starting to get a little teeny bit white, and then we're gonna, I'm gonna have to use this spatula unfortunately. So at this point you should start getting a little bit more brownness to it. I don't know if you can see the brownness there. On the bottoms, that is. So now we're going to turn the heat down just to a medium, and let that cook some more. We need to get the centers cooked because we're going to be chopping up that chicken and adding it to the broth. It calls for salt, pepper, and thyme. Salt and pepper, it asks to do that to taste. I would just add a standard amount of. I like to use a grinder because you get larger flakes. You can adjust the size of flakes. So you want to make sure you get large flakes of your pepper to get more flavor. Salt, like I said, be careful with how much you add because the broth already has a good amount of salt in it. And then thyme, we're going to add about 1 teaspoon of thyme. That the salt, pepper, and thyme has been added in there. It's not on, by the way. We are not cooking it yet. Generally, you only want to add the ingredients when you're ready to cook, but I had to get that done for video purposes. So we're going to add the mixture that we made, that we sauteed at the beginning, slices of the cooked chicken, all to this, and when it boils, and then add the gnocchi and boil for another 4 minutes, and then add some more ingredients. Go ahead, turn up the heat like basically all the way to quickly get final steam, any flavors that are left up in the air. And once that gets there, then we're going to remove it, cut it into edible slices, I guess, and cut it right here. I don't have a cutting board, so that sucks. And then once we add it all together, we should be good. I've already pre-measured out the half and half that we're going to be adding to it, and I think there's one other thing that we add. Oh yeah, the gnocchi, of course. For the gnocchi, I actually like to, right here, when they come in the package, they're a little bit stuck together, so if when you're adding it, you make sure that you break them apart, because then it has more time to cook evenly. They will break apart even if you do put them in. They're not doing that, but I figure it just helps a little bit. Even if there's a little teeny bit of rawness to it, it's going to boil in here anyway for a good 15 minutes or so. So don't be too concerned about it, but we're going to let this cool down, essentially. Get the flavors in there. Haven't been able to turn them over and check them, though. Yeah, looks pretty good. It might be a little bit raw on the center because they were a little teeny bit frozen, so that's one thing that we do want to check. But other than that, we should be ready to go. Let's go ahead and cut them. Breast halves right here actually is to separate this right here and then cut almost along with the grain here. You could cut against it. Technically it doesn't really matter, but I feel like it has a better texture if you have the long grains when you're eating it and not short little sections of grains of chicken. So you see how this goes out to the edge here. You want to cut almost along with that so that you get longer grains. So you're going to cut it kind of like this, and then cut this one like this. It's going to be slightly raw right in the center there because my chicken was not fully thawed. Like I said, it is still going to be cooked fully, so it's not a problem, but You definitely want to make sure you clean up afterwards since you're going to be cutting with raw chicken. Sliced chicken into the soup there. We're going to also add this right here, all of the stuff that we sauteed earlier. I think this recipe had me do a little bit much chicken, but we'll see how that turns out. Let's mix this up a little bit. I'm going to let that boil, and then we'll be right back when we're ready to add in the gnocchi. Slightly overfill and pack a cup of spinach, and then chop this. Generally when we chop it, like you can take off the stems if you want, or you can leave them. I think that's personal preference because it all gets cooked anyway. We're going to just essentially at the very end cook this until it wilts. When you're boiling, you want to see it kind of boil like this. Much more than that, then that'd be too much of a boil. This is more of like a pretty regular or mild boil. Let's see if I can get some of this gnocchi to go on the bottom. Anyway, you can move it around a little bit and make sure it's getting evenly cooked. There's nothing sticking together. So it's boiled for about 4 minutes. We're going to turn it down to essentially a simmer, so around 2 or low or so. We're going to let it simmer for about 10 minutes just to make sure it's fully cooked, and then add in the these two things. We got the chopped spinach right here. I decided to remove the stems. And then also about 2 cups of half and half. You add both of those in and let it boil until the spinach wilts. 10 minutes, and should be just about there, I believe. Let me check it really quick. Boink, 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 boink. Well, I think we're ready to add the rest. We're going to add in spinach right here. So let me grab a bit of it. There we go. I think good size slices. We're going to turn this back up to probably low, like a medium high, low medium high. So we're going to cook this for about probably 1 to 2 more minutes. Done cooking. It's generally a good time to take a little bit of this and taste test just the liquid, and then see if you need to add more salt or pepper or seasoning of any sort. And tastes like it could use probably a little bit more of both, so I'm going to add a little bit more salt and pepper, let that cook into it, and wait for this spinach to wilt. So it's all mixed together, tasting correctly. The only other thing that I do add, you don't necessarily have to add this and the recipe doesn't call for it, but I have actually some cheese that I've grated previously. This is going to be an aged type of cheddar cheese. I believe it's like a Norwegian cheddar, along with a Monterey Jack that I bought from the store. So I just add a little bit of that to it while it cooks, and get a little bit more that creamy texture to it. One of these spinaches, or spinach cuts, if I can get one. I'll show you what wilted looks like. So here we got one right here. It's a little hot. I don't have a place to really put this. So when it gets wilted, it turns a little bit more dark, curls up. It becomes very soggy and wet. Here's what it looked like beforehand when we put it in. It is a little teeny bit darker, so you can kind of see the pieces in there are basically almost wilted. The texture that you're looking for when you pull it up and out is to see that it's a little bit creamy, and that's kind of the look that you're going for. And if it's nice and creamy, then we know that we've added a good amount of liquids and it's boiled off enough. And I think this basically looks good. So all you're going to do is put this into a bowl, serve it, and probably put a little bit of cheese on it as well if you want. There we go. Oh, very cool. Toast.